I think we should start off by saying that I think there's a guy, Shane Scott, he writes a book called The Myths of Entrepreneurship and basically says people think an entrepreneur is somebody in a garage in California taking one huge gamble and winning. And that's actually not. Most entrepreneurs have jobs and then they have an idea and then they start testing it out little by little and it doesn't work. And then they make an adjustment and then something kind of works. And then over time, they build something that's big enough for them to slide into. And
That's our experience.
That is exactly our experience. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We started consulting when we were both working in universities. And then we built up enough and we started wrong, right? We thought it was going to be communication improvement. We thought it was going to be basically helping people make better presentations at work.
Yeah, because we do communication improvement. Yeah. So that.
But we never made a dollar.
We never made a dollar on the presentation part of the house.
Right. But people would call and they're like, well, I don't need that, but do you do conflict resolution? And because we're poor, we're like, well, yeah, we do. And then we'd figure out, okay, well, what would that look like? How would we do that? And then we go do that. And then we're doing conflict resolution. And then that leads to, I don't know what was the next big thing. Probably negotiation at some point. We started doing that. And and so on and so on.
As a side note, we were trained on that.
Yeah, I know. We sat in a great University of Texas for, I don't know, 15 years between the two of us, something like that. If you count both of our PhDs and then you count my time at the Leadership Center and your time.
Yeah.
And your MBA, your time teaching there. Probably 15 years. A great university. So yeah, we know a little bit about a lot of stuff. And so it wasn't far-fetched that we would teach a class on negotiation and conflict resolution, but that's not what the company was started on. None of that was on our website because we didn't think that's what it was going to be. And even then, once we had it going, it was only going enough for me to be doing it full time. I mean, you had to keep a university job to keep the lights on.
Well, when you started, I was in the middle of a PhD program and you're not doing like a side hustle at a PhD program. You're not, they would hate you for that. So I couldn't actually build anything while I was getting that done.
Yeah. I think, look, the point is nothing prevents you. If you're listening to this, the research suggests that most entrepreneurs actually have a full-time job. Even in the Adam Grant book, I think it was Give and Take. They talk about the glasses people, Warby Parker.
It was either Give and Take or the next one.
Yeah, Originals.
But a couple of points. So, and one of them I agree with and one of them I don't necessarily agree with is, I mean, people have to eat. And so taking out a huge loan and starting a business on something that you don't really know anybody wants to buy, probably not super smart. Like, test out, run the experiment, test it out while you're still bringing in food to feed yourself and your family and not taking out a loan to do that, where, you're actually at a loss at that point.
Right.
And build it up enough so that way you can eventually step out of it. The other thing that Adam Grant kind of talked about with at least his examples is like the idea that it's multiple people who are starting the business. And so it's multiple households feeding in the income into the business.
Yeah.
And I see the logic in that on one hand, but every partnership that we've seen, aside from marital ones, which even some of those are questionable too, every single one of those partnerships has been fraught with difficulties, and one member of the group really not taking the money, but not really doing their role. And when you form a partnership for a business, you should be thinking about it in the same level of weight as getting married to somebody, because when that partnership has to be dissolved because it's not working, it is a divorce.
Sure.
And you are going to split up a business, and that business may not survive the splitting.
Yeah.
And so I understand his point in the book that the multiple households actually help to feed a stronger business. But I would be very, very cautious about forming a business with somebody. I'm already, you and I, we split up. It's already going to be a freaking mess. So,
I'm learning a lot on this podcast, I'll say.
No, you know what I mean.
Very,
you know what I mean.
very insightful podcast.
Well, everything is split 50-50.
Yeah, but I think the point I want to make about side hustles, and then you can chime in with what you think is important, is that it's within reach for most people. And we talk to people who are unhappy about their current jobs with some frequency in our role as executive coaches. And we're typically encouraging people to don't just think about changing this job for another job. That might be a way out, depending on the nature of the problem and what they're unhappy with. But what's something that they could begin building that might begin to take a little pressure off them, gives them another option, gives them a chance to build something up that might turn into something bigger in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. And then they could have an off ramp that's much more practical than quitting next week.
Well, many people want to form their own business and are very scared to do it. And part of that scariness is the idea like, I got to be able to eat.
Yeah.
I got to be able to support my family. And what we're saying with the side hustle is it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You could actually do this thing gradually while knowing that you have that stability. But once you form a business, like once you have multiple clients, you're actually more stable than having a job.
Right. Well, in the sense of this is what I think you and I have talked about this before. This is a point made in one of the books by Nassim Taleb that the worker with the salary thinks they're more stable than the barber. I think in Taleb's book, he uses taxi driver. You think that you're more stable because I have a job, it's a steady paycheck, but actually you're subject to the whims of one company.
Versus you're subject to the whims of one boss. Really. Because it's a boss that often, it could be the company. The company could downsize, whatever. But more likely you're subject to the whims of one boss. And whether or not that boss decides that they want you on the team or not. And, having your own company, you have every single client is your boss. So you have multiple bosses, but it's not devastating.
Yeah.
If for whatever reason, one of them has to go away.
Yeah. So, we have a lot of people in healthcare and they don't like their jobs anymore, but they make a ton of money because they're doctors or dentists and they want to do something different out of healthcare. Right. But they make, let's say an average doctor or dentist makes $200,000. And let's just say they wanted to go be a project manager somewhere in the company, but no longer seeing patients. Mm. Well, project manager's making 90,000. You're making 200. And nobody we know making 200 wants to go back to 90. And so there needs to be more of a side hustle. What can you do? How could you begin to transition away?
And I think this is the second reason for a side hustle, is that I think there are many jobs where you're getting paid nicely enough where you really can't walk away from it and replace it with something else. And for those jobs, sometimes the side hustle is that thing that you love that sort of keeps your morale up.
Yeah, sure. That's a good point.
And that you do it on, you're doing it on the side and going to continue to do it on the side. It's just like a work of love that kind of makes you feel sane.
Yeah.
While doing a job that you have fallen out of love with for
Yep.
whatever reason
Yep.
that you have to keep because like your life is structured around just, like everybody, a certain income.
Yeah.
And so you really have to keep that job. And the side hustle makes you better at that job because you
Yeah.
have an outlet. You have like a safety release valve.
Yeah.
I think I think what we've talked about, like having a side hustle with the intent of building to eventually go out on your own is one reason for a side hustle. I think the second reason is this safety valve that lets you do something that really
Yeah.
has meaning to you while
Yeah.
having to maintain a job that you've
Yeah.
fallen out of love with.
And sometimes it can be a combination of both. I'm thinking of a few years ago, I had somebody who was a doctor and they wanted to basically experiment they wanted to not be doing so much patient care. And so they wanted to experiment in a different part of the company, basically in a data analytics role. But the data analytics team was full and they wanted, nobody wanted this person not seeing patients because of how much money she was bringing in seeing patients, right? And so she was able to work a deal where she took a slight reduction in what she was doing in patient care and then went over and spent a day and a half a week in data analytics. And that she did that for maybe a year and a half. And eventually the data analytics was like, look, this has been great, but now we have enough room to, instead of having somebody for, point whatever FTE that was only a day and a half a week, now we've got the room for a full FTE. And, the company's not going to let us give it to you because it's going to be for, like, as we were talking about so many minutes ago, the FTE is going to be for 110,000 and you make 200 something.
And they want you seeing patients.
And they want you seeing patients. And so basically the company sent her back into full-time patient care out of analytics. And then analytics hired an FTE. And she's like, okay, all right. But she had really loved analytics. And she saw that it wasn't going to be an easy path to do that in the company. And so 3 months later, a job opens up that's basically sitting on top of a government agency. And they wanted a doctor, but they needed a doctor who understood analytics. And she got the job.
Mm.
And so she basically made close to her same salary, 0 patient care, and was able to move into analytics. So it was one of the best examples that I've seen of basically working an internal side hustle. And it was real life because it didn't work, right? It started and it went for, I think, about a year and a half. And then it stopped working. But she got a new win in her sales. She got everything you're talking about. Like she fell back in love again with the company. And then when it didn't work out, she knew definitively
Her clock
That's
was
right.
ticking.
Yeah.
Company.
Okay, they've got me in this niche of patient care, patient care, patient care. And that's not what I want to do anymore. Do I have enough now to be able to make a jump? And she did. And she hasn't looked back. And that's been probably 2 years ago now. And so your point is well taken that sometimes the side hustle help keeps you sane.
I feel like the consulting was that in academia, because the thing with academia is like you have to do research and papers and they take so long. And I think describes many people in academia who like highly achievement focused, as I've outed myself before in other podcasts. Like the length of time and the fact that you could actually have a very good paper, but it's still going to get rejected or like
Sure.
it's a 95% rejection rate
At the top.
at the top journals.
Yeah.
Like you're most likely getting rejected and you put all this effort into it and it's going to take you a year to find out that you've been rejected. Like this is a nightmare for people who need to be able to check things off their lists.
Yeah.
And so in that case, the side hustle with the consulting was actually a good way to get my achievement fix.
Yeah, it's options, right? It's alternatives.